All right. Well, we are actually starting episode 2 of the Sneaker Beso podcast, family and friends. I am your host, Tech Support Ted, aka TST, also known as the Sneaker Beso. And we are so excited to come to you with some fresh ideas and content today. We also have a sneaker reveal, and I'm joined here by my co-host, Mr. Sean Knows Everything. Why don't you greet the
Yes,
people,
I,
Mr. Sean?
I'm excited to be here and looking forward to this episode as well, and ready to check out some sneaks.
All right, fantastic. So, listen, everybody, we're going to do a sneaker reveal, but let me kind of lead in by covering the topic for today. We're all about the HBCU experience and the role of HBCUs in producing top tech talent. And I'm going to tell you right off the bat, this is going to be an exciting episode. We have some fantastic guests joining us.
Big up.
Big ups. Absolutely. One of them actually is in the room with us. So I'm excited to see her. And I am representing Southern University today, SUBR, the Jaguars, in honor of my dad who attended Southern University.
Yes.
My co host
Come on
was
now.
supposed to have Tuskegee
Look,
in the building. What? Well,
HU. It was
it
HU.
was
Right.
HU first,
Right.
right?
Right. But Grandpa.
But pull the Tuskegee thread.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk to
So
us about that.
my grandfather was a Tuskegee Airman, and he supported
Absolutely.
throughout World War
Hmm.
II.
Yep.
So I should have been. You were right. I should have been representing.
Hmm.
I got mixed up. I was late. My apologies.
But it's all good.
My bad. My
Listen,
bad.
like
But
Kendrick said, it's in your DNA.
but
You got royalty inside your DNA, my
yes,
brother.
yes.
So
I do
every
see Hampton
yes.
University colors represented. We'll get to that again later too. But
Yeah, yeah, for sure. For sure. Absolutely. But nevertheless, we are still gonna be talking about the HBCU experience, but also just how HBCUs have impacted culture, right? And we're gonna start first from the sports perspective because when I was thinking about this show, I started thinking about like all the different athletes I remember as a kid, Jerry Rice,
mm,
Walter Payton, that were HBCU graduates, NBA legends like Willis Reed, even Chris Paul, right? But also, when you think about this, right, it's bigger than that. We've got um, the hidden figures, right? We have the women who the famous movie with Taraji P
that's
Henson
right.
starring in,
That's
right?
right.
We're going to talk about them as well. But most importantly, I think it's going to be really important in this episode for us to just show how HBCUs have incubated tech talent. It's bigger than sports. It's bigger than the battle of the bands because we all kind of know about the HBCU traditions with halftime being all about the bands, right? But more importantly, right, HBCU graduates are not just impacting in music and entertainment and other parts of life, but also in technology, right? So as we prepare for that, first we got to do the sneaker reveal.
Let's do the sneak reveal.
Yes, absolutely.
This is
So
a good one too.
so shout out to the Howard Bison folks, right? This is our sneaker reveal for today.
That is
This
a beautiful
is the
sneaker.
Jordan 1 HU special edition low. And this shoe is near and dear to me because I am a proud member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, and we were founded January 9th, 1914 at Howard University. So I have to represent that. But most importantly, when we think about this shoe, I want to give a special shout out because Nike really spent some time, Sean knows everything, actually crafting special edition sneaks just for certain HBCUs that are signed under their brand. And so this distinctive design, as you can see, has the Howard logo, the Nike swoosh here, and this is a limited edition release, and definitely matches up very nicely with the HU aesthetic.
I
So
love and
yeah,
I
what
love
do you
the
think about
badge
that?
too. That's
Yeah,
awesome. I
yeah, for
think
sure.
that's very presidential.
Exactly.
So how many of
Yeah.
these were made, and what was the year that they produced these? You know.
Yeah, so I actually don't know how many they were made. They are limited edition release, and I want to say these came out in 2022 timeframe, right?
That's awesome.
And so they actually were released in two versions. They have the blue and the red, and then the red and white with the blue swoosh. But these also had some limited edition Howard jerseys as well that came out with these.
So I gotta ask,
Yes, sir.
on the secondary market, what are these going for right now?
Oh man, somewhere between 150 and 220, somewhere around there. So
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, if you got them earlier, you
I know, right? Exactly. If I had gotten them when they first came out.
right.
Yeah. But all good. So yeah, so this is our sneaker for today. Keep following us on IG as we drop new sneakers every episode. We will have a new sneaker that we featured. Last episode we featured the Kobe Air Force Ones. But we're gonna keep it moving, right? We're gonna actually pivot and talk a little bit more about just the role of HBCU. So I'm gonna drop this sneaker here on the table. All right, folks. So when we think about, the role of HBCUs, right? There's the athletics part of this, right? And we've had tons of coverage on that, but I want to talk more about the technologists, right? And I want to focus specifically on Black women technologists. I watched the movie Hidden Figures
Mhm.
several times. I saw it when it came out in theaters, and I'm sure you saw it too,
Absolutely.
right?
Again,
Um,
Hampton University was well represented in that.
yeah, well represented. And what's fascinating to me, guys, is when we think about you know, those women, what fascinated me first is, obviously the adversity they had to deal with,
Yeah.
right, and executing their jobs. But there was a part in the movie when they were actually their job title was computer.
Right.
Did you catch that?
Yeah. With Katherine Johnson, the original, or one of the original computers, right?
Literally.
Yeah.
All right, that was their actual title.
Yeah.
And if you've watched the movie, they actually were very instrumental in calculating the correct trajectories, right, for the Apollo missions. But more significantly, they ushered in an era of transformation because they literally went from hand calculations to actually using
Mhm.
what would become microcomputers,
Yeah.
right? Right. So there's a strong legacy there, right? You've got Katherine Johnson. She graduated from Virginia State College, right? Mary W. Jackson, also an HBCU alum. Dorothy Vaughan. So all of these women were HBCU graduates.
Right.
It's pretty cool stuff.
Indeed.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's excellent representation there. I think that. So, can we talk a little bit about the movie,
Yeah. Let's
right?
talk. Let's
And
dig
how
in.
that related to real life.
Yeah.
And so they made a good. I think they did a fair enough job of representing the contribution, but it was much larger than that too. And I think you have to Hollywood it up, right? But
Hmm.
Katherine Johnson was a trailblazer, and all of them were, but particularly Katherine Johnson was a trailblazer in that she not only did STEM at the highest level, NASA level, but she also represented herself at a time
Hmm.
when that was not there. So in the movie, they still made her a little subservient, but at the time, NASA gave her enough free reign where she could be as creative and as scientific and detail oriented as possible. You can't actually keep someone under an auspice or repressed and let them shine. You have it's one or the other.
That's
So
right.
in order for her to be effective, they had to step back. They still the movie didn't do enough job, I think, a great enough job of showing how much of her ownership she had,
Yeah.
right? Which she couldn't have been under the thumb and do what she did.
Yeah.
So, and she mentions that in some later interviews,
Interviews.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Right.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's important to understand that the movie did a Hollywood thing,
Yeah.
right?
That's right.
Which
Yeah.
to make it more acceptable, I guess, for
More
the but
palatable, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
she was a trailblazer in the way she handled herself in in the face of, I guess, oppression,
Hmm.
right? And also as a black woman of that time,
Yeah.
where there was no one else, right? And we're going to talk about that later too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Sean, I want to pull the thread on that a little bit because I think we're seeing sort of almost a boomerang effect in this day and time
Mm,
where black women in corporate spaces and especially in technology are kind of having to deal with some of the same challenges again, right? In
absolutely.
terms of not only, lack of representation and visibility, but having to navigate spaces that aren't necessarily the most comfortable, right? And in many ways I think that what you just highlighted, right, deserves echoing from the mountaintops because the same skills that Katherine G. Johnson and her team had to bring forward are still very much relevant today in 2025,
Absolutely.
right? Really establishing your credibility, owning your narrative, but also being unapologetic about who you are and what you stand for and your values in the face of adversity,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
Last episode we talked about the mama mentality. But in this episode, we're seeing, another example of people who were relentless in their pursuit of excellence and were unapologetic in their expression of that, both in work and in personal life.
I love what you said. The pursuit of excellence here.
Hmm.
If Katherine Johnson and the other three were not excellent, then we wouldn't be talking about them, right? They
That's right.
wouldn't be where they were. And for them to be where they were, they had to be the most excellent, right?
Exactly.
The most.
Yeah.
They were the most excellent.
Yeah.
Because again, and at that time, would you think ever that the first choice to fill those positions would be those women
Hmm.
at that time?
Hmm.
So you had to go through this one. Oh, he can't cut it. Oh, he can't cut it. Oh, he can't cut it either. Oh, but they are better than everybody. Do you understand what that means? I mean,
That's
the
that
mentality.
speaks
Do you
volumes,
understand?
my friend.
Right?
Yeah.
They had to try to go away from them.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Only to come back and say
Only to go,
these are
well,
the top.
they were
Yeah.
here all
Top talent.
along.
Yeah. That's right.
Oh, I guess we're gonna have, right.
Yeah.
And then they brought them home.
Yeah.
The
Exactly.
women brought them home.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can't. I will go on and talk about this
No,
all.
this is why we're here though,
The
people. Listen, for those who are listening, right? This is our heritage, right? And the main reason we want to bring this forward and to the forefront, I'm going to be frank. There are elements within our society today that are trying to erase this history, that are trying to say that it doesn't matter, that it's not important, whether it's the Tuskegee Airmen, whether it's Jackie Robinson, whether it's our hidden figures at NASA, right? These people are, in my opinion, the best of what America offers and has had to offer, right?
Yep.
And we are intrinsically a part of that story. And it is up to us to continue to echo and for future generations and tell this narrative. In my opinion, it's funny you talked about the selection, right? Because there's a lot of talk right now about merit based or competency based hiring, right? We don't
Ooh,
need to use the term diversity. We don't need to concern ourselves with, where a person comes from.
yeah,
What's your thoughts on that, man? How does
man.
that play out in this discussion here,
Gotta
right?
gotta start
Loosen up a
moving.
bit.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So particularly with regard to HBCUs,
Mhm.
right? The mis I think we are generally there is a misconstruing of what diversity means, DEI in the workplace, right? The narrative that you're hearing from the extreme is that DEI means we're going to knock some other people who were more qualified off and out of consideration in order for some quota to be filled. And that is absolutely not the case, right? What the real purpose of DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Inclusion. The real purpose is to allow those who are well qualified, even more qualified in the case again of in hidden figures, even more qualified than everyone else, to be considered. It's simply that. In an age of implicit bias, where the general leadership of any organization is highly homogenous, we need to be able to allow consideration of others who might be better qualified and allow not only that, we'll just say spice of diversity and collaboration in a monolithic organization to happen. If you don't consider that, if you don't allow that to happen, it will never happen. So what we're seeing right now is, calling it as it is, people who are in power want to maintain that
That's
type
status
of
quo.
power, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you don't consider it, you don't have to let it happen. If you don't
Yeah.
consider it, you maintain status quo.
Yeah.
So diversity, equity, and inclusion is simply the allowing of the consideration of those who might even be more qualified.
Yeah.
That's simply it.
And it's something to think about because imagine if the hidden figures had never been in position. Those astronauts wouldn't have made it
Exactly.
home, right?
If they went with their
Like,
first,
yeah.
right,
Yeah.
their first inclination to go with Bob Smith.
Right. That's something that I don't think is really captured right now in the narrative, right?
Right.
There's always this narrative that says, well, this is why, we're removing these elements, right? But what's not really covered is, well, what's the impact to the country, right? Or
Right.
to a company when it doesn't have the intellectual capital, the fullness of the potential, right? And there's a lot of research that shows that diverse teams actually are the highest performing teams, teams that have diversity of thought, diversity of perspective, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's so much bigger than just saying, oh, well, we want a homogenous group, or we want to even say that, oh, well, this is not competency related. No, it is actually. I think that's your point. Is it's about having the best talent, and regardless of where that talent comes from,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
So I think that's important for everybody listening to understand. This is bigger than just a skin color. This is about the future of this country. It's about whether we continue to not only thrive but also have competitive advantage on the global stage. There are other parts of the world that have fully understood for quite some time that diversity is a good thing, right? When it's actually put to work.
If
Yeah.
if you're silencing a large part of the population from contributing, are you getting the whole picture? Are you getting the whole all the world of possibilities?
It's a great question.
I would
We'll live to watch this unfold,
I
my
would
friend.
resolutely say I don't think so.
Well, and this is something to chat about, right? As you for the viewers, comment it when you see this on YouTube. We'd love to hear your feedback on what you think about these topics, right? So switching gears, right? I want to talk about impact, right? Because I'm pivoting specifically here. I want to throw some facts at the viewers here. Did you guys know? And when I was doing research for this episode, I was blown away. 24 24% of all STEM degrees are awarded by HBCUs
HBCUs,
in the
that's right.
United States,
That's right.
right? Right. Howard University, of course, who we just represented with the sneaker, right? Just received Research One status, right? Fantastic
Big up Howard
news. Big
University.
up to
That's
Howard, right?
huge.
Tuskegee just received a $2.9 million grant from the National Science Foundation for their Cyber Bridge program, right? So they
Yeah,
are developing the next generation of cybersecurity professionals down in Tuskegee,
that's right.
right? They've had a long history of training pilots, but now they're moving into training cyber warriors, okay? Right? So when we think about this, and this is for our viewers, right? Understand that HBCUs are delivering, right? A lot of people look at an HBCU and they think entitlement, right? They think, oh, okay, HBCUs, and there's a lot of articles right now about HBCU funding and how much the Department of Education has sustained and supported them. But there's a real impact that HBCUs are making on our economy, right? It's
Indeed.
important for people to understand that.
Indeed. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have Trump. Did I say that? I didn't mean to say that. I don't want to bring it strictly to. So let's go. Let's strike that from the record. We
Mhm.
have, uh, we had a support from the president or from the White House in the last term
Mhm.
or the term before last. We had
Mhm.
continued support, right? But what's happening now is we're seeing potentially that 24% might be challenged,
Mhm.
largely because of $45 million in funding that went out originally that is now being moved to the White House, which, with
Mhm.
because of executive orders, might disappear in this climate of removing DEI. So what you've just stated, 24%, 29 million for Tuskegee
Mhm.
and Howard being R1 status could be challenged. I'm not saying it is going to be, but
Mhm.
I'm saying if we are to see what's happened and we see that play out, the fact that we moved funding for HBCUs away from the Department of Education and to the White House means it's very easy to simply remove funding.
Yeah,
So
it makes it easier
it makes
to
it much
to
easier,
do that.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's no
Yeah.
longer
Yeah.
managed by the
Yeah.
Department of Education. So
Yeah. Yeah. And so one thing I want to make before we break, or a point I want to make, right? When we're talking about these decisions around funding and these decisions around access, right? It's not just saying that, okay, the Department of Education and their role in this, or what's decided from the White House, right? There are other sort of pieces to this. Corporate funding comes to mind, right? Recruiting, different types of initiatives that are private public partnerships, right, are also at risk when you have an administration that decides that, you know, honestly, these institutions don't matter, right? And so I think advocacy is really important in this day and time, right? Not just from people who care, allies, but the alumni associations, right? Those who are involved directly in advocating for HBCUs, they need to be vocal. They need to be
absolutely,
actually, calling
have
call
to
your
advocate.
congressman, right? Call people that have influence in Washington and make sure that your voices are heard, right? Because these institutions matter. That's the main point here.
And if it, just to finish on what you're saying, if we don't have that representation, we don't have that support from the community, right, then we're an invisible. We're invisible.
Yeah,
Right? If we're
absolutely.
not saying what we need and we're not standing up for that, we're simply invisible.
Yeah, yeah.
And things will fall away, man.
I know. That's it. All right. Well, look, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a little bit after we pay some bills. This is the Sneaker Beso podcast. Our episode today is talking about the impact of HBCUs on technology careers and tech career development. We'll be back. I'm your man, TST, the Sneaker Beso. Sean knows everything. We'll be back shortly. All right, welcome back. We are here at the Sneaker Beso podcast. We are talking about the role of HBCUs as incubators of tech talent. We are joined here with a fantastic panel group of ladies that's joining us. We're going to talk about their journey in tech, but specifically their time on campus at HBCUs. I want to welcome to the Sneaker Beso podcast, first and foremost, Miss Dionne Beer. Welcome, welcome. So good to have you here. And Miss Deanna Stewart, who is here representing North
Tis
Carolina
I.
A&T.
Tis
And Miss Dionne, who are you? Which school are you repping today?
I am repping Southern University, BR
That's
campus, the
it.
main one, A&M.
That's
So
exactly right.
glad to be here.
Fantastic. Absolutely. So as we get into the topic here, we've already kind of set the foundation, really talking about the role HBCUs have had in influencing the culture, but also specifically the tech legacy of HBCUs. We talked about the Hidden Figures, the famous movie that was put out a few years ago. Taraji P. Henson was the star representing Katherine G. Johnson. But we want to get into some personal narratives, right? We want to talk a little bit about, the way HBCUs have showed up in your lives. But before we do that, maybe you guys can give us just a quick intro. We'll start with Miss Dionne. If you can talk a little bit about your career and kind of what you do, what you're up to.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Really happy to be here. So, just a little peek into my very diverse career. I started out actually my first 2 years at Dillard University in New Orleans. I was a diehard engineering major, and then I discovered physics. Ended up going back home. I'm originally born and raised in Baton Rouge, and ended up enrolling in the physics program at Southern University in Baton Rouge. Fell in love with it, just continue to move forward. And I do want to give a special shout out to now the Professor Emrys of the Baton Rouge Southern University Physics Department, Dr. Jola Bagayoko. Really happy that he played a pivotal role, not just for me, but for all of the students there. I did get a scholarship through his tenacious support for the students with what was called the Timbuktu Academy. It still exists today,
Wow.
and he is just a trailblazer. He was very much so hard on us, but we understood it after we graduated, appreciated, and just really love the support. So started out in physics. I ended up getting my master's in physics from Kent State University. And then I went on to become a research scientist. So very early on in my career, the jobs were plentiful while I was in school, but after I graduated, very slim. After the first year of doing research here in the Dallas area, I ended up getting laid off and then jumped over into the telecom. So I started out designing and researching liquid crystal displays. So these are displays that maybe we had third parties with other companies like Ericsson. So
Mhm.
at that time, I was like, hey, well, what's going on the other side of the industry? Let's check it out. So at that time, and I'm dating myself, I landed a job as a systems analyst at GTE, which is now Verizon
Yep.
after it
Yeah.
got birthed from a merger.
Yep.
So navigated through that company for a number of years, over 14 years. Moved into systems administration, managed a help desk, managed systems engineers. Then got laid off from that job. I managed projects during that time. Ended up and landed into program management. So I've kind of hopscotched across different industries. So travel, telecom for sure, financial services. Even did a stint at UT Arlington in higher education. Ben
Wow.
E. Keith, food and beverage industry. And now I am at just the best of the best, Helmerich and Payne, which is in oil and gas, and I'm a program manager. So I have a team of program managers that work for me, and our focus is anything IT, tech, data, cyber, and I always say other because we're always willing to help.
Awesome.
Outstanding.
Yeah, that's great.
Man,
Yeah.
Amazing.
my head is hurting a little bit.
I know. That
Yeah,
was
I'm
like
over here
a
like
journey.
I gotta go after that.
Yeah, we
Why
did
y'all
a
do
few
that to
life
me?
years. I feel like we should be talking
he,
about
he,
quarks and
he lost me
black
at
holes
physics.
too.
Right?
Yes. Remember the quarks.
That's great. All right, Miss Deanna Stewart.
Oh my goodness. You're awesome. That's
Thank
let
you
me
so
start
much.
there. Okay, how do I follow that? I'm Deanna. I started, let's see, born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And all of my schooling was predominantly white. So like I was telling the panel, like in my high school class, or in my high school, 1,000 kids, there was 10 of them were black. I think we had like a half a Asian, and my brother, he counted as one of the black kids, so it wasn't a lot. So
Right.
I knew leaving, like going into the real world, I wanted something different to start with because
Mhm.
I've seen the other side. I want to see the side that looks like me.
Yeah.
So that's what led me to North Carolina A&T. Well, no, the North Carolina Agricultural and
And
Technical
technology. That's right.
State
There
Yes.
you go.
University. Okay, we're gonna put some respect on its name because, truthfully, A&T and Greensboro, North Carolina, raised me. Like that's how I feel. It taught me how to deal with the real world while not being in the real world of me being the majority. So it gave me the sense of community. It gave me a sense of self. It gave me confidence. I wasn't exactly the most confident. Other people would tell you different, but I had to project a different sense of myself to
Hmm.
that world growing up. And I didn't want to do that. Once
Hmm.
I was grown enough, I was 18 and 3 weeks. Okay, 18 and 3 weeks old when I stepped onto A&T's campus, and from there, I feel like that's just when everything just opened for me. Um, a lot of my friends now, most of my friends now are my family. The people that I met day one in 2006, to date myself as well,
Hmm.
are still my best friends to this day. And I know Black women engineers, like programmers,
Yeah.
Black women cybersecurity, just all Black anything that you need. I have it in my network, and that is just it's so I don't know how to thank God more for it,
That's
to be
awesome.
completely honest,
That's confidence, right?
That's
because
it.
that is my, like, without a lot of them, my life would be so much different.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I give a lot of the thanks to A&T, to the community I had. I was a computer science major, and at
Hmm.
A&T, during those years, computer science was a family. I got a real true sense of family from there. We had each other's back. We were in the engineering building till wee hours in the morning. Our teacher assistants would be there helping us.
Hmm.
Um, it just it made my life what it is now, which is like a really, really, that's a deep statement, but I mean that. I
Mm.
legit mean that. Um, so career wise, I graduated with a bachelor's degree in computer science, like I said,
Hmm.
and I went straight into the real world, into my first corporate job. I mean, like, picked up everything, moved out of my little apartment, went to stay. I moved to the DMV area, to the DC area, and you guys know that's expensive.
Yes, it
And the
is.
first job right out of college, I don't know about you, but I ain't make a whole lot of money. I
Nope,
made
we
enough
don't.
to survive, but part of my survival was one of the people I met day one at North Carolina A&T State
Mm.
University.
That's
They
Right.
awesome.
gave me a place to stay, and when I
Mhm.
say it was 3 people in a one-bedroom apartment, you can figure out the arrangement yourself.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
did what we needed to do. They
Absolutely.
helped me get started, just
Hmm.
get to a different place that I didn't know before. I didn't know nobody, but I was always ready to just go do whatever I needed to do. I'm,
Right.
I'm
Hmm.
out.
Yes.
So
Hmm.
my first job was I was in a technology rotation program, and that's how I led into information security,
Hmm.
and which is now cybersecurity or whatever you want to call it. But
Hmm.
that has been my full 15-year career.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't have been able to do it without the connections that I made at this illustrious HBCU. Aggie Pride. That's
That's
our
it. That's
motto.
the
That's our
motto.
statement,
There
and
Yeah.
you
it's
go.
not just a motto. It actually stands for um, achieving great goals in everything, producing renowned individuals dedicated to excellence. I will never forget that statement ever in
Dedicated
my
to
life,
excellence.
Dedicated
Well
excellence.
stated.
because
Yep.
it produced my renowned individual self, and
Yes.
I am
Yes.
dedicated to excellence.
I
Yes, I am.
love that. I
Love
love that.
it.
Brilliant,
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
brilliant,
That's
Absolutely.
brilliant.
Right
fantastic.
on. Right on. Right on. So let's pivot and talk a little bit about some stories, right? So, one of the things that I loved about my time on an HBCU campus, even though I wasn't attending, was it always seemed like the faculty had a real vested interest in everyone's success. You
Absolutely.
guys have one or two faculty members that you remember that just went over and above, whether it be, pushing you hard, right? And making you uncomfortable. Last episode we talked about being comfortable, being
Stepping out of
uncomfortable.
your,
Yeah,
your
stepping
comfort
out of your
zone.
comfort zone.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a faculty member that comes to mind right away? You say, man, this person really made an impact. Yeah. Why don't you start us off, Miss Dionne?
I think I've named him already,
Yes.
Dr. Jola Bakayoko. He would challenge us from day one, and we all hello if you're watching, Dr. Bakayoko. Everyone dreaded the mathematical physics class, and he taught it, and we were like, oh my God, we have to get past this. But it was, when we think about it now, it was him challenging us out of our comfort zone, challenging us to still be our authentic selves, but supporting, because he was still in a way a father figure where he just went above and beyond for everyone to ensure our success.
Can you just talk about him and how you first, like, what's the story of you first encountering Dr. Bakayoko
Mhm.
and then how he grew to become your mentor, so to speak?
Well, he wasn't directly my mentor, but he mentored one of my friends directly. I had a different mentor, Dr. Brown, at the time, and then also Dr. Ali Fazy. But it was a community
Right.
with
Yeah.
the professors and the students. You could go to any professor, and someone just based on the area, for example, for me of physics that we were going into, they would mentor us into, say, may solid state, nuclear, whatever your interests were, and ensure that you were going to be propelled and out of your comfort zone in that. So,
Hmm.
for example, when we're talking instructional wise for Dr. Bagayoko, he would challenge us all. And it was the most funniest thing. The day one class, he literally had a formula for a curve and was teaching us about managing our time. But he had developed a formula for time management. So basically, what you put in is what you get out. And we were just like, he did a formula for time. Like, we haven't even
Mm.
gotten into the lesson, but like, alrighty then. So that was just something that was impressed upon every student in the department, and it stayed with us.
Yeah.
And then talking a different dynamic with Dr. Brown, really encouraging you to pursue, hey, where are your interests? And it's okay if they change. Pushed us into signing up for summer programs, and that's how I found my space, my niche. And then as we navigated, I'm like, wow, thank you so much, Dr. Ollie Faisley, for just propelling me into pursuing where I wanted to go. I knew where my interests were, but I just wasn't sure where can I build and extend and explore this other. So that's how I ended up in solid state, basically, and then navigated into liquid crystals. I didn't want to be confined to one area, so that's probably why I didn't get my PhD in physics, because I wanted to do everything.
And it
But
sounds like you're working on doing everything still,
it
right?
That's right.
So I don't fit the mold. I don't want to say necessarily a unicorn, but just someone that's in a continuous growth cycle.
Sure. That's
Yes.
brilliant.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And I think that continuous growth cycle really started in those interactions, it
Hmm.
sounds like, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, what about you, Miss Stewart? Well, do you have any stories for like a TA or a person that comes to mind that says, hey, man, they really helped me
Yeah.
transform?
It's hilarious because I I joke with my friends that I owe like part of my degree to certain people. I'm like, here, this corner is yours. Just go ahead. You can write your name there. You can write your name. I wish I could have
Joint
used it as
signature
like a
session.
yearbook,
Your
like for real,
yearbook. Yeah.
and make everybody sign it who had something to do with me.
Yeah.
Between my TAs, one of my TAs, he's one of my best friends to this day. And there was two teachers. They really let me be myself. That is what I needed.
Hmm.
That's what I needed. I needed encouragement to be myself. I saw myself in one particular professor, Professor Effort, and shout out to Professor Effort. That's my dog. Um, but I'll never forget. Like we had a programming class just to tell you the type of person that he is, and I'll never forget inheritance about it, like or the concept of inheritance in
Hmm.
programming
Yep.
because he used Krispy Kreme donuts as the as the explanation because you have
Love it.
a basic donut, and if you're inheriting things from this this property, then
Hmm.
that's when you get the icing.
Uh-huh.
Then if you inherit something else from this library over here,
Mhm.
that's where you get the
The
sprinkles.
sprinkles.
Like all
Yes.
this
Okay,
type of stuff. He
okay.
brought in Krispy Kreme donuts
I
to
love
teach
it.
us that day. And that's the type of level of stuff that I need to
To
understand,
make
okay?
the make it
To put
accessible,
it together.
yeah.
But that was just the type of guy that he was.
Love
Like
it.
he
Yeah,
was always the smiley, giggly, goofy, happy person. That's what
yeah.
I saw myself in him. And that's
Mhm.
really what like it kind of helped me just, oh, you can be yourself and you can do this. Like
Mhm.
look at this person. Look
Mhm.
at where he is. Like
Mhm.
look at what
Yeah.
what is going on, what he's doing. And he was everybody loved him. Well, loves. He's
So
still
Professor
there.
Effort and Dr. Bagayoko,
Yes.
Yeah.
legacy, right here.
That's
Absolutely.
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Shout
Yes.
Yes.
out to those people. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So building on that, right? It sounds like you all, each had an exploration of identity that was unfolding as you would have these interactions. How important is it for today's women in technology, specifically Black women in tech, to really be confident in who they are, right? I think, even offset, we were off camera, we were talking about this topic of who am I and how do I address the world? How do I show up in spaces? How did that sort of, help you as you went into your career, right? Those formative years, you really be more confident in who you are as a Black woman. Can you guys talk to us a little bit about that?
Um, man. The
And it's a
confidence
journey,
thing.
right? It's a journey.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
confidence thing has been a journey because, like I
Yeah.
said, I grew up in a completely different, predominantly white to all black to whatever you want to call the world now. Like, and
Yeah.
it's I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of different things, and I've had to adapt. Adapting is one of my strongest strengths.
That's awesome.
I mean, because going from Pittsburgh to A&T, I didn't know anybody in North Carolina.
No.
I didn't know anybody
Mhm.
Hmm.
at all. Like, it wasn't like I had a family member down there or something. No, like I said, 18 in 3 weeks. I literally was like, I'm out of here. Like, that was how I ran away. I'm gone. I don't care what I do, but I'm
So,
going.
sorry, you said run away though. You said you ran
I
away.
did. Yes.
Are you
I
saying
used that literally. Like that was going to A&T was my way to run away from Pittsburgh to something that I wanted to do, something that I was able to choose in
Mhm.
my
Nice.
life. That was my first time I could choose something and I chose to go experience something completely different and
Yeah.
the complete opposite of what I was used
can
to.
you talk about that? The decision to go.
Um
What sparked that decision and that motivated you to follow through
yeah.
with that?
So at the time I was going to church and I was going to a church on the black side of town and they had an HBCU tour that was coming up. I begged my parents to let me go to do what they needed to do to make sure I was able to go. It was a week long. We went through all kinds of HBCUs up and down the East Coast. We went to Howard. We went to everything in Atlanta,
Hmm.
Tuskegee, Tennessee. Yeah,
Yes.
Tuskegee,
Hmm.
Norfolk. Like we went
Mhm.
everywhere, but we didn't go to A&T. And
Interesting.
I started doing my research because I wanted to go there.
Mhm.
And from everything that I gathered from that tour, and everything I read about A&T, I was like, okay, I'm going there. I applied, I got in, and I was like, okay, let's do it. That was it. I've always been that person. I'm gonna go. If that's what I want to do, I'm gonna go, and I want to experience so many different things. And that was the beginning for me. I'm just so happy about
That's awesome.
it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so, Miss Dion, you also seem to be a person that once you set your mind on an adventure, you just
Yes.
dive in, right?
I do. I
Yeah.
jump in with both feet, but I do my research because as I'm deciding or in the position to make a decision, I'm thinking ahead about the outcome.
Hmm.
I have a very as you probably know analytical mind, and so I'm like, okay, well, what happens if this happens?
Hmm.
What happen? Okay, well, this could be the outcome if I choose this. And so when you talk about decisions, and for me, very similar to Deanna, I grew up going to all of these magnet schools where we were always the minority
Mhm.
in the
Mhm.
40%, and in most cases less, and then that was a mixture of not just African American, but you've got Asians and other,
Hmm.
and it was always having to have that unspoken elephant in the room. And so and as you went to these schools to better your education and to pursue your dreams, you were just, wow, this is an accomplishment for me. No pressure, but then you do have pressure that's not spoken about. And that was my decision after high school. I want to experience. I went to a predominantly white schools all the way up through high. I was like, I want to experience going to an HBCU. I was on the verge of, do I go to LSU? Do I go to Southern? I was like, you know what? LSU is very similar to the structure of how this high school is, but I want to experience something different. I want to go someplace where I can be me, not be looked at or critiqued
Yeah.
for being different, or critiqued for choosing to just pursue and grow.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what motivated me, where it's like you're under the microscope. You have to deal on a regular basis
Yeah.
from both sides of the spectrum, unconscious bias. Well, she's too black to be white, and she's too white to be black.
Yep.
No, I'm just speaking clear English. That's all.
Right.
But
Yeah.
if you want me
Clear.
to go there, I can.
Right.
I
Like
want
That's
to.
right.
You are touching on a
I
few
know
things
how
here.
to speak
Yeah,
properly.
absolutely.
Yes.
But
Absolutely.
if we ain't
we
gotta
need
do
to,
all that,
yeah,
then we
we
ain't
can't.
gotta do all that. Like it's
Absolutely.
not,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it makes you think. I'm a very, as you probably got, you can see, a laid back person, and I love helping people. I love seeing not just anyone being successful. And kind of
Great.
goes back to what during the earlier cast when you talked about getting the most qualified person.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I look at.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, hey, who's the best fit that where I can help to just make them to be the best person they can be, and to just motivate. And it makes me, think about the different dynamics with my sister and I, who's hello, Valencia, I hope you're listening, who is a very talented and brilliant pharmacist. She went to Xavier. She started out at Southern in physics, and she did biophysics. I was like, oh my gosh. So she got tired also growing up of being in the magnet. So she's like, I'm done. She's like, I'm going to she went to Terra High. So
Uh-huh.
so she was like earlier on, I want this experience. So there are different dynamics and different pressures that we have to navigate through from both sides of the spectrum. It's like, hey, can I just be me without you trying to put me in a box and label me?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't like those boxes or labels either. I
So
try to break them as much as possible.
what does that mean though? Can you just be you? Because you touched on a few things there,
Hmm.
right? There's the language portion, which in the Black community is interesting, right? Because it sparks off a few. I wouldn't say necessarily problems, but you have people who feel differently if you sound one way,
Hmm.
and we can code switch, right?
Yeah,
So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Do it
right,
all the time. Yeah.
yes.
it's one of those things that we've developed over the years. But then if you do represent that normally, you might hear something else from other people, right? That
Mm-hmm.
right.
Yes.
So, but you said, what does it mean to be you? Or
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean? What does it mean to for both of you to be you and your journey as women in tech?
You want me to start?
No, because you be like,
Mm-hmm.
let me get mine out the way real quick.
Go for it.
To
Go.
be me, I take up a lot of space. Okay, I
Mm,
I
yeah.
know I can. Um, and that's just I've been like that. I don't know
You
how
don't
to
know any other
really.
way to
Yeah,
be.
I don't know
Hmm.
any
Yeah.
other way to be. Like,
Yeah.
before we started, I was like, how much of me am I supposed to
So
be? Like, and they said, no, bring your whole self. I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
cool, I can do
Yeah.
that. Because I haven't been traditionally accepted everywhere. I'll say that. And
Okay.
that's part of the me saying I was running away. I didn't fit in
Right.
in
Right.
high school, middle
Right.
school, elementary school, but I wasn't an outcast. I'll say
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
that. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the popular kid, but I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the kids that were getting bullied every day.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I was there. I can hold my own with whatever. I can
Right.
be nice to the non-popular kids. I can be nice to the jocks and whatever else,
Hmm.
but I still didn't fit in.
Yeah.
Even being able to be that chameleon and like, make somebody else feel comfortable, I didn't fit in. I didn't feel like I fit in until I got to school to A&T, and then I could be my whole whatever self without thinking, I guess, in the back of my mind, am
Yes.
I being too
Ah.
much?
Yes.
So
Yes.
Yes.
at the
Yes.
like,
Yes.
in
There
those
we
younger
go.
whoa,
years, yeah, in
Yes.
those
whoa,
younger years, it was like, well, you might not be able to do all that, but you probably still gonna do it anyway. But it's still,
Right.
it's in the back of my mind. I'm thinking
Right.
about it. When I go to college, it's like, well, everybody
Yeah.
look like me.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
you said something interesting. You said make them feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Mm.
A lot of people tell me that I make them feel comfortable or I make them feel safe. I try my best not to judge people. It doesn't matter what they look like, what they're doing, because I know how I've been judged. I know how
Mm-hmm.
I've been looked
Mm-hmm.
at
Yes.
from things that I didn't even do anything,
Right.
and I've been judged and
Right.
been looked at crazy. Not everybody is going to be the cool person. Not
Hmm.
everybody has the vocabulary to talk to the smart
Mm.
genius people. Like I would look at you,
Oh my
like
goodness.
like, girl, I don't know how many syllable words you know, but that we can talk, but I don't know you up here. But like
Yeah.
I can walk into a room and instantly make people feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Knowing knowing and recognizing that I can do that helped me be confident with being myself.
Yeah.
That's
Because
big.
if I'm not being myself, there's people around me that'll be like, "What's going on? Why are you not you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
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 up?"
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
my community is very supportive of who I am as a
Yeah.
whole.
Yeah.
And if I'm not being myself, they're not okay with it.
And they'll
They're
call
not
you
okay,
on
and
it
they
too.
will call me on
Yes.
it. Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
ask me what's going on.
Yeah.
And if I need help with getting back to being myself,
Yeah.
they will help me with that.
You have those accountability partners built
Absolutely.
into
That's
that community,
great.
Yeah.
right? What a great value statement there too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love that, Deanna. She
Yes.
doesn't know this, but we have a lot more in common than she would think.
No, it's not.
Because I too navigated with just being me, and I hear that a lot. Dionne, oh my God, we're so glad you're here. I can go anywhere. In a networking event, it could be at a church event, it could just be at a bar. I'm gonna be me, and I see people for just being people. I
Yep.
don't judge.
Mhm.
I
Yes.
don't stigmatize people. I don't make assumptions. I allow people, even in their, even if they got a little rough around the edges, even if they need some improvements, people are still people, and we're always growing, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And a lot of
Continuous
times we
growth.
have to allow our lifestyles to be a testimony.
Yeah.
And so that's what I do. And I'm like, hey, let's talk. And so God has blessed me to have a language to speak to the introverts. Believe it or not, I am an introvert. I
Hmm.
used to be very shy, but I challenged myself to get more involved. Like, we met Ted and I through one of the professional organizations where I was hosting
Hmm.
a seminar that we had, and I challenged myself over the years. Hey, well, if I'm going to be the first, then if I'm paving the way for someone else, it's a lot of pressure. But
Yeah.
don't compare us one to another, because she's going to be different and still be hurt. And I appreciate that, because I don't want her to be like me. I
Right.
don't
Hmm.
want him to be like me.
Yeah.
Right.
And so
Right.
you learn to navigate that, and I've been this way all my life. And I love and accept people for who they are. And going from, the predominantly white to the predominantly black, it was great. And I was like, this is great. I can take my first African American literatures course. I was like,
Mhm.
I love it.
Yeah.
And you learn more about you. I'm learning about the women's sciences. This
Yeah.
is great.
Yes.
And then it went
Yes.
to another level when I went to graduate school. I was like, whew, I went from Louisiana to Ohio, of all places. So
Oh, I hate that
culture
state.
shock.
I
Yeah,
hate
so
that
I
whole
was up in
state.
your territory near Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh.
Ugh.
So it was an interesting experience, and but I enjoyed it because I learned it gave me another perspective to see other people for who they were. They saw me as being an American. I was the only American in my
Oh,
class,
you
I
were in
think, at
Kent
that time.
at Kent State?
Only African American, I was at Kent State
Yeah,
in
At
that
Kent
yeah,
State.
program.
Hmm.
yeah.
So the ladies in my group, I was the only American, and I got to experience just being my authentic self, nerd that I am. I know I own it.
Hmm.
And
Nothing wrong with
Stand
it.
on
Do
that.
it.
Stand on it.
being accepted for just being you, and having the same kind of candid conversation. Tell me about your culture. And it was something wonderful that the ladies started, and the guys got jealous. So we're like, okay, we'll let you guys come in. So during our study groups, we would cook a traditional dish from our country.
Oh, that's
All right.
dope.
Okay.
And
That's
if
super
we
dope.
had someone from the same country, if you're from the north or south, pick a different thing. So I
Hmm.
was like, "Ooh, Louisiana, I got options. What do you
Oh.
We
guys
got a
Yeah,
want?"
lot
girl.
of
Oh.
options.
But I
Yeah, a
didn't
lot
want
of
my
flavor.
secret to get out. Hi, mom, if you're listening, because they know I don't prefer to cook, but I can. So my
Hmm.
secret was out. But
Hmm.
it was a great experience, and that's how I want to implore that to other people.
Hmm.
So I'm usually, even I give you an example. With other experiences I've had at work, I'm always tapped to be the person to kind of smooth things over, because I bring the calm, and
Hmm.
I'm a very strategic minded person. So when I
Hmm.
see, I'm like, oh, okay, well, let's pause, everybody. Everyone here is valuable, but I need you guys to not focus so much on your one piece, and understand how it makes up the whole.
Right.
Yeah,
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
that's how we
Yeah.
have to see things. And
I
as
get it.
women,
Yeah.
and as we're navigating being ourselves, it's like, hey, I've been told in industries that I'm too nice, and I'm like, not. Well, I get that, maybe that's your opinion and your perception. And so I've had to address it. And I think that's what kind of pulled me out of my shyness, because I was like, I don't like labels. And I know that it may not be presented in negative connotation, but it depends on the situation. I was like, no, yes, I am a nice person, but I think you're that's a misconception for interchanging it with being respectful,
Yes.
right? And
Good
then
point.
I'm like, yeah, well, sometimes people take kindness for weakness. So, but
Absolutely.
Yeah.
there's a way to navigate because we're under the microscope with how you're handling things as a minority woman in leadership in
Mhm.
any position. Because the moment something happens, you're being judged on just so they're going down the checklist.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, we
It's
They're looking
visibility.
at you.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
listening to
You're
you.
automatically
Yeah.
visible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so you
Right.
have to know how to navigate under the pressure, being yourself, but still, hey, this is the right way to do this. And I stand on this because this is I choose to give what I want to receive respect. It doesn't matter who you are.
Mhm.
So,
Absolutely.
and that's why I asked the question, honestly, is
Mm-hmm.
because we both said being yourself. There's a different,
Yeah.
you have different views, right?
Right.
Yes.
You're also empathetic, right?
Very
Yeah.
So
much
you
so.
Very.
can see, in order to navigate well anything that might be coming at you, you have to be empathetic. You have
Mm-hmm.
to understand what other people might be thinking and
Yes.
feeling.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
can.
So when it comes to DEI, right? When it comes to stepping out there, and you mentioned also implicit bias, and you said it wasn't implicit bias,
Unconscious.
unconscious bias,
Unconscious
right?
Unconscious.
bias.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's there.
having to do when I think, and Ted, I wanted to kind of bring this to
Mhm.
your next question, but yeah, having empathy in mind and what that means, what being yourself means. If you're working in a workplace where you are one of the only two or three, as you've been in all of your lives,
Mm-hmm.
right? How might you help to change that, right? It's particularly for women in technology. How do you go about helping to increase those numbers of representation of women in technology, of women of
Um,
color in technology?
well, for me, I like giving back. I try my best to volunteer and get
Mhm.
myself out there as much as possible, because I think it's about seeing yourself. I think it's about representation,
Mhm.
and being and younger kids being exposed to what they can do. So
Mhm.
there was a volunteer event at Redbird while ago, but it was called Big Thought. One of my coworkers invited me to
Mhm.
volunteer, and it was pretty much just all about getting younger minorities from underrepresented places exposed to things like robotics
Mm-hmm.
or um, medicine. Like they
Mm-hmm.
had somebody, showing you how to give blood and stuff, or they had hands-on like trades like HVAC or running wires and certain things,
Mhm.
and it was like they had virtual reality headsets or they had actual robots you could touch,
Mhm.
or there was an actual section. My favorite was the studio. We made beats.
That's
We
awesome.
Ooh,
literally
very
made beats.
That's
nice.
Oh,
We
great.
had, I mean, I was in there with my headphones on,
You're in a Dr.
jamming,
Dre, huh?
having a time. Okay, TST knows
That's
I love
right.
me some music.
Love it.
So like it
That's
just
great.
getting I like to get people exposed, and specifically black women
Yeah.
exposed to you can be in cybersecurity. It's
Yes.
not you're
Yes.
not
It's not
too
off
dumb to
limits. It's
do
not.
it. Like
Yeah,
it's
that's right.
not impossible.
That's
You
right.
can be somebody that looks and sounds and acts like me and
Mhm.
still be in cybersecurity. That
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
so it's about community for me, building the community as much as I possibly can in those spaces
hmm,
to be able to represent what I want others to see so they can be like, I want to represent that too.
Mhm.
outstanding.
Absolutely.
That's
That's great,
great.
Deanna. And I agree with you. Representation matters. And I can remember making a conscious choice. My son is 22 now. Even when he was in school, I was on a couple of PTAs, definitely always there for field trips and really educating the kids about what I do. And even now, as he's, even gone through high school and college, I collect kids as I go. I just can't shake it. And even in their adulthood, they come by and visit. Whether or not my son's there, they just want to say hi. But it's a good thing to be
That's
able to
beautiful.
impart that and
Yes.
to be a mentor,
Yeah.
to be that advisor, to be that coach. And that's what I would, like when I see young women, young men who are minorities and they're new in the field, I know what it feels like to have to navigate those water. Being the first, being the only woman in a predominantly male dominated field, it makes a difference. You have to I'm like, well, I'm not here to knock any chips off your shoulder. I don't feel like I should have to prove myself. You're constantly challenged. So I usually have to take that diplomatic route of shaming them to submission by just a simple response. Well, give you an example. If we're in a particular meeting or we're doing a particular project, I ask, the question comes up and I'm like, excuse me, they didn't ask you how to do it. They're asking you on your thoughts on how you're architecting something. Don't change the subject. Don't
Yeah.
I call those smoke screens?
Yep.
And so we get that a lot in being challenged as African American women, where that's another layer of the unconscious bias that we have to work with. And
Wow.
Mansplaining.
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
and in some cases we come in, earlier in the podcast you talked about being excellence. You talked about excellence too. And
Mhm.
so we have to work 10 times as hard coming in, just getting in through the door. And then it's like, after all I went through just to be here and just be myself and just to the DEI, I'm just qualified, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
I'm
then I'm
qualified.
here and now you're challenging me again.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's just
Yeah.
mind
Real.
blowing. And so I'm pretty laid back. So I think a lot of times when people hear my background, they get intimidated. I'm like, I'm not here. I don't belittle people. I don't make people feel any less. I expect you to be different, and we can teach and learn from each other. But we've had to deal with a lot of that, and so we have to be the mentors. We have to show that representation and encourage our young girls. And I love it. I'm like a science fair nerd. And I remember a couple of years ago, I just came off of a term being on the board of our Fort Worth PMI chapter, and so it was so much fun. It was this program that they had every year, that would kids would come from around the future cities is what it was called.
Mhm.
Kids
Yep.
came from around the state of Texas with traditional science fair. It was awesome from junior high to high school, and I
See the
got to part.
excitement on her face,
Yeah.
y'all.
I just
Yeah.
loved
I
it.
love it.
Yes, I love it.
Wink, wink, nerd coming
Yes,
out.
do
Come
it.
But it was
on.
fantastic.
Yes,
Nerd gang.
Blurred City. That's
Nerd
right.
I
gang.
love
Yeah,
it. I
Blurred
love
City,
it.
baby.
So I was like, oh my God, they've got projects. So it
Mhm.
was amazing to be able to
Go
go
fair.
around. And I'm like, oh, I get to go. How much time do I have to explore to
Mhm.
see the creativity of these kids
Yes.
I
while
love
I'm
that.
I love
representing,
it.
Love
Yeah.
it.
while I'm encouraging? It's
Yes.
like, hey, well, you guys are some future PM. I can't wait. Hey, let's
Mhm.
stay in touch.
Let's
Reach
stay in
back
touch.
out.
Mm-hmm.
Let
Yes.
me continue. Be it. I'm like, you guys are doing well. And I'm like, hey, and if it's not in this field, that's okay. Where are your interests at? You can be the best engineer that you choose to be. You can be the best scientist that you choose to be.
That.
You
Absolutely.
can be the best
That part.
doctor that
That.
you choose to be.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And
That's
that's
it.
the foundation and the motivation and the coaching that we get at an HBCU, which is literally, it takes a village. That's what we get.
I wish that there would be signs for both of you, right? So that as you're walking down the street, as you're walking past schools,
Hmm.
that people could see not just you, but all of you,
All of you.
right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So that they,
Yeah.
again, what you're doing and what you've just said, both of you are helping people to understand, especially young Black women, to
Hmm.
understand I can do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
she's doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
That
Yep.
absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Love it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We
Thank
we
you. Thank you.
salute and applaud both of you.
This one always salutes and applauds me, and he is
Absolutely.
part of my community.
I
Yes.
love it.
Man,
Absolutely.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I love that I can bring my whole self to wherever I go. I love my
Yeah.
Yeah.
sneakers. I love my technology.
Whole
Yeah.
Like,
self.
And you can bring
I'm a
it all
I
to
nerd.
the
love that.
table.
I'm a
And that's
nerd,
okay.
but
That's
I'm
right.
cool. Like,
That's
it
right.
is what
That's
it
a
is.
shirt right
Like,
That's
there.
it.
Bring your whole self.
That's right.
yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. So
Love it.
one final question as we kind of wrap up here. We are sort of looking forward into what Sean and I are loosely terming a post DEI world, right?
Oh
Mm.
boy.
How important is it to have executive sponsorship, right, to ensure that Black women in tech not only are able to have these entry level roles, right, and that's fantastic, but can also matriculate and actually get into, right, the C suite, right, the boardrooms, right, where decisions are made about hiring,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right, about budgets and priorities, strategic priorities for these companies, right? How important is it that we still have advocates, right? That in a world where it won't be popular anymore, right,
Mhm.
to write policies or to approve certain hiring practices, how important do you think that's going to be, Dionne?
I think it's going to be very important. Just thinking over my career at different industries, there's always been the elephant in the room, and the women in particular, just women in general, and especially minority women. There's a certain way that we were coached. If you were lucky to have a mentor, to have to navigate in how you dress, how you wear your hair,
Mm,
you're judged.
Don't get me
Um,
started.
Mm.
yeah,
Sounds like we need a part two of this
Get
That
me
sounds
episode.
very much like
it's
started.
that.
it's a lot of pressure, and I would, I do my braids occasionally or other styles that I would normally not do at work because there's always this stigmatism and they look at you differently. And it shouldn't have to be that way. And I know there's been this big debate about natural and art. So I'm like, well, I'm just gonna do what I like to do.
Do you?
And
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be me.
Yeah.
But I think when we get into and we're talking about the C suite, that is really like they have this hidden checklist
Oh,
of
absolutely.
guidelines that they
Yeah.
feel
Don't
or
think that
criteria
they don't.
Mm.
that they feel you should have to meet
It
in
is
order to be even considered.
it is real.
It's real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's always the elephant in the room for women in general, and specifically for minority women. And I'm not gonna lie, it's tough.
Mm.
But I think on the other end of the spectrum, your work speaks for itself. We
That's great.
oftentimes have heard that your gift makes room for you,
Mm.
and you talked about Hidden Figures, how thinking about how they went through all these people and then they were considered.
Mm-hmm.
I've dealt with that quite often
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
throughout my life, and it's like, well, oh, so you've knocked on every other door, nobody had a solution, and you could have come to me first, but you were looking at your checklist
In
Yeah.
some cases,
Mhm.
rejected you
If
first.
yeah,
Right.
yes,
you
Right.
weren't
Right.
good
You
enough
were
to
there
ask the
already.
question.
Right.
Yeah.
always
Right.
there.
Mhm.
Right.
Or you have the other end of the spectrum, they come to you, well, what are your thoughts? And
Mm-hmm.
next thing you know, your thoughts are being
Become the
presented
solution.
elsewhere.
As
That's
yeah,
As the
right.
as
And you're
there.
like,
solution. Right.
Man.
Right.
wow.
Here's
Right.
what we did.
Right.
Right.
I've
Right.
experienced that before too, but then it only gets you so far.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
so that's where I think it makes a difference in having an advocate, knowing who you are and your authentic self, knowing that you always have positive intent, and recognizing the difference in the gifts that you bring to the table.
Recognize your gifts.
Hmm.
Yeah.
so I'll say that everybody's heard it. It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Hmm.
Okay.
It's
All
also
right.
what you know too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's
absolutely.
because I feel like you don't have to be in that C-suite position to make
Agreed.
the impact.
Come on.
Agreed.
So that's where I'm at with it because I personally don't want to be in nobody's C-suite,
Mm-hmm.
F-suite, nothing. I don't want that because I can make my impact as the individual contributor that I am.
That's beautiful.
So having that
That's true.
advocate in that space, if
Hmm.
that's what I want, that's great. If that's what you
Yes,
want, that is great. But don't count yourself out if you don't have that.
that's
If you
right.
don't
I love
see
it.
that,
That's
because
right.
you can take advantage of where you are and
Yes.
affect what you need to where you are. It's about you. It's about what you have to
Yes.
offer.
Mm.
You have something to offer to anybody at any level, whether
Hmm.
they're entry level or to the CEO. So if you know that you have something to offer, you don't have to hang so much on that person with the bow and tie
Yes.
at the
That's
top,
right. That's
and
right.
you
Yes.
don't have to cry because you don't know that person or because they don't know you.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
so do what you can where you are until you
Yes.
get to wherever
Where you
you
want to
feel like
be.
you want to be.
That is
Absolutely.
brilliant.
That's
Right.
so
Agreed.
good.
That is
Agreed,
excellent.
Deanna. That
Oh
was
my.
excellent. And I
Absolutely.
agree with you. And that literally because of that, when I would observe what was going on, I'm like, I don't want to do this at this time.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and you can do
Yeah.
that.
You
And I
can.
was okay with it.
And
Yeah.
that right there is the part. Be
Hmm.
okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let somebody else tell you that no, you shouldn't be okay with where you. No, that
No,
I'm
it's
cool.
okay.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
good. I got
Hmm.
my crab legs, my sneakers, and I travel. I'm
Yeah.
fine. I don't
Absolutely.
need nothing
I
else.
love that.
What would you?
Absolutely. Put that
I'm
on a shirt.
serious, okay?
Crab legs,
I
sneaks, and a
am.
plane ticket. No matter.
Period.
Life is good.
And life is grand.
Yes.
Okay,
Awesome.
life is
Awesome.
grand.
That is
Awesome.
brilliant.
Awesome.
That's brilliant.
Beautiful.
Well, listen, on that note, right?
Look, we can't say anything
What
else
else
after
do
that.
we need to cover, right?
That was perfect.
Yes. I want to take this opportunity to thank our guests, Ms. Dionne Beer and Ms. Deanna Stewart. What an amazing
Yes.
conversation. I
Thank
feel like
you.
we need to have a part two.
Thanks for having me.
But
Thank
this
you
has
for
been
having me.
fantastic. Viewers, definitely make sure you like and subscribe. This is the Sneaker Be So podcast. I'm your host, TST. My co-host, Sean, knows everything. This has been a wonderful discussion on the HBCU experience, specifically as it pertains to Black women in tech. We are so grateful to have had you ladies join us.
Thank you for
Absolutely.
having
Support
me.
HBCUs.
Support
Yes.
HBCUs,
Yes,
advocate for
Please.
HBCUs,
Donate.
donate to
Donate.
HBCUs.
Donate.
Sure.
Yes, absolutely. And go to Bayou Classic too, Southern Grambling.
or the greatest homecoming
coming
on
on
earth.
earth, A&T, right?
G-Hoop,
Absolutely. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, look, we'll be tuning in next time for our next episode. We're going to feature another sneaker reveal. And definitely make sure you like and subscribe and follow us on all the socials. And we are out. The views and opinions expressed by guests in the Secret Bistro podcast do not represent the official views of any organization and reflect the author's experience only. We do not endorse or take responsibility for any content shared by our guests.